He wanted to complete 64 squares, and each one needed a body. Bitsa Park, Moscow, a frozen labyrinth of twisted trees, abandoned paths, and a silence so heavy it feels alive. The wind drags across the snow, carrying a cold that cuts through bone. Here, hidden beneath layers of ice and darkness, one of the most disturbing stories in Russian history unfolded, a place where dozens entered and never returned. To understand Alexander Pichushkin, you must first understand the world that shaped him. Moscow in the 1990s was a city on its knees. After the fall of the Soviet Union, order collapsed almost overnight. Factories shut down. Alcoholism surged. Neighborhoods became war zones of poverty and desperation. Police were overwhelmed, underpaid, and often unwilling to pursue crimes that seemed endless. It was a perfect breeding ground for monsters. And in the middle of that chaos, one quietly began to grow. People walked through the city afraid. Dark alleys became death traps. Parks like Bitsa, vast, unmonitored, and easy to disappear into, became no man's land. This is where Pichushkin would later hunt. But his story began long before the first body fell. Alexander's childhood was marked by a violent accident. A fall from a swing that struck his head with such force. It caused lasting brain damage. Doctors noted changes in personality. Teachers said he didn't understand emotions the way other children did. They noticed something hollow behind his eyes, a boy who watched others not with curiosity, but with calculation. His mother tried to raise him normally, but the damage was already in motion. When frustrated, he became explosively aggressive. When calm, he was disturbingly blank, as if feelings were something he could only imitate. Then came the first death. A childhood friend, someone he spent time with, was pushed into a sewer opening. The boy didn't survive. Authorities believed it was an accident. Pichushkin remained silent, but those close to him recalled that he didn't cry, didn't panic, didn't react. It was the first sign of the darkness he kept hidden behind a quiet exterior. As he grew older, he gravitated toward something that offered structure. Chess. A game of power, dominance, control. He wasn't fascinated by victory. He was fascinated by the idea of commanding every piece, deciding their fate, moving them as he pleased. Chess became the language through which his damaged mind made sense of the world. But chess alone wasn't enough. The desire for control spilled into something far more terrifying. Working at a supermarket, Pichushkin lived quietly. Co-workers found him strange, always alone, always watching. During breaks, he stared at chessboards for long stretches of time, not playing, just imagining. Then came the idea, a delusion so grand it consumed him. A chessboard has 64 squares. To him, that meant 64 people, 64 lives to extinguish, 64 moves in the masterpiece he believed he was destined to create. When planning his murders, he acted with chilling simplicity. He approached lonely men, usually heavy drinkers or elderly pensioners. He offered vodka as a sign of friendship. He suggested a walk through Bitsa Park, and when they least expected it, the hammer struck. Fast, cold, merciless. He dragged the bodies to sewer openings, shoved them into the darkness. Later, he described the sound of the bodies falling as satisfying, proof of how completely detached he was from humanity. His killings escalated quickly, from one a month to one a week, to multiple victims in the same night. The more he killed, the more confident he became. Some bodies were left posed deliberately, like clues in a game only he understood. To Pichushkin, Moscow wasn't a city. It was a giant board, and he believed the police were opponents far beneath his intelligence. While Moscow panicked, Pichushkin grew bold. He believed he was unstoppable. And for years, he was. Investigators noticed the pattern, but the park was too large, resources too limited, and witnesses almost non-existent. Pichushkin played with them. He positioned bodies, changed methods slightly, and monitored how the police reacted. Each murder was a move. Each discovery, one more step toward his dream of 64. But every game ends. And for Alexander, it ended with a single mistake. He chose the wrong victim. A coworker, someone who trusted him. She wrote a note for her son, explaining she was going out with Alexander. When she vanished, investigators followed the only lead they had ever been given. When confronted, he broke quickly, not out of guilt, but out of frustration. His game was over. During interrogation, he spoke words that froze the room. "I felt like God. I decided who lived and who died. I wanted to complete all 64 squares. There was no regret, only disappointment that he was captured before finishing." Alexander Pichushkin was convicted of 48 murders. But detectives believe the number may exceed 60. He received Russia's maximum punishment, life in prison. Today, he lives inside a coffin cell, a narrow, claustrophobic concrete box, barely wide enough for him to stretch his arms. No contact, no sunlight, no human connection, only isolation, the same silence he once used to hunt. But even locked away, his legacy haunts Moscow. Bitsa Park remains a place stained by memory, a reminder of the monster who turned it into his personal board. In the end, the cold wind still carries the truth he believed until his final free breath. For Pichushkin, life was just a chessboard, and people were disposable pieces.